My name is Tina Fuentes, and I'm a professor here at the School of Art within the College of Visual and Performing Arts. Well, I think when we talk about honesty and integrity, I think that these two terms are really very, very significant, whether it applies to the students or the faculty and or staff, because without some of this type of terms governing the roles, then things can go awry very, very quickly. So it's really important, the maintenance of that integrity. It's really, really important. Well, without that honesty, it's very, very easily that one can fall into the discussion or the issue of plagiarism. Because here we end up having this creative thinking, this type of thinking that people feel like they need to develop a voice, a singular voice. And in doing that, of course, we share ideas, and whether we share language or whether we end up sharing anything else along the lines of that creative process. However, there's a very, very a close line there that you have to be extremely difficult with, of not going over that boundary and start to integrate more of someone else's ideas into yours and claiming them as yours. And that is where it is a discussion that is brought forth within the classroom situation, especially within, let's say, a studio. That's what my area of specialization is, in particular painting. And we talk to our students about that, about how important it is that they generate their own thoughts and their own ideas, because otherwise, once we get into that arena of plagiarism, then it just knocks out anything that they were thinking about or what they were doing. And so we have to be sure and talk to them about, again, getting back to that integrity and getting back to that self-respect. And that's something that's very, very important. And that is something that when people are working within their research, they're generating their ideas, their own discussions that are there, they need to keep that on the forefront constantly. That doesn't mean that you can't share an idea or talk about a particular time period or an era in which this particular style or mark or method or statement was being stated. However, how did you generate from that moment and bring it up to the contemporary moment? Where are you with this, and how did it differ from where you were? Well, I really have thought about this in terms of the center. When you have a center that brings forth a conference, or whenever you bring in, say, a group of people, a community that are sharing ideas, and sometimes these ideas may be very diverse. And when you end up bringing these discussions to a group of people or with a group of people and inviting a diverse group, then all of a sudden what happens, the way from my perspective, is that the sense of fear dissipates. Because all of a sudden you're introducing either a different dialogue, you're introducing a different style, a different community overall. And when that occurs, and when that is brought into an educational system, then it helps to expand the mind and expands the learning process. And that is just so important, especially within higher education learning. That doesn't mean that, of course, you can't do that at a public school system. That's important then, but I think it's our job, to do that, so that way, whenever our students or whomever does move on from this particular community, hopefully that they have embraced some of that discourse that's been going on, and hopefully they will be able to carry that. What role may ethics have as the world transforms from chaos? Probably the biggest role, I think, is communication. Whenever you end up having a stronger communication, then what happens is that hopefully it dissipates what I just mentioned earlier. It dissipates any sense of fear. Because, you know, when people don't understand either a language or don't understand a particular culture, don't understand a particular style or method or whatever, then people kind of tend to pull back and they may not engage as much. But whenever you open up those lines of communication, you give opportunities for people to be able to experience this diversity, then what occurs is maybe there might be a deeper appreciation and hopefully possibly an understanding. That doesn't necessarily mean that everybody has to agree, but you can agree to disagree. And so that can only happen through open lines of communication, and that I think is so important. It's a project that occurred through an invitation from Dr. Eric Bruning, who's an atmospheric scientist here within the university, and he actually placed out a call for an artist to come in and participate and engage with discourse and a dialogue within research that he was working with. And I responded to that call. He just sent it out via email, and I saw it and it sparked my interest, and I decided, well, I'm going to respond and see what it is that he's talking about. And when he and I sat down and we talked about what was going on, I was just mesmerized not only by what he was doing, but also I was thoroughly engaged with the similarity of languages, of language, shall I say, words that he was using. And I reached over and told him, you know, you're using almost similar words that I used to describe my work. And so we started talking and sharing and ideas, and he invited me to go ahead, let's submit a proposal together. And he had already written the bulk of the proposal for the NSF grant. And so I just went ahead and joined in, and I went ahead and gave him what he needed from me. And I just thought to myself, what's the chances of an artist getting an NSF grant? And it's few and far between, if ever. I didn't know. But lo and behold, within about 6 to 8 months later, we received notice that we had gotten 100% approval. And we had a window of 5 years, and Dr. Bruning had a window of 5 years. I gave myself, or I requested for a window of 3 years, where I would come in and I would actually attend science conferences, and I would go listen to science lectures, and I would pick up some reading material within the arena in which his specialization was. And from that, I would come into my studio and I would actually start producing work that was generated from those thoughts and those ideas and those readings and conversations with other people in the science arena. And we also went out on a couple of storm chases, which was kind of a whole new world for me, and with such a fear that I have of lightning. But I went. I was good. I was a good camper. Again, the communication was so important because we were able to share our ideas. Dr. Bruning would come into my studio and I'd show him what I was doing. He'd talk further about where he was, and so with that sharing of those ideas, then we were able to develop and it involved an actual exhibition of the work. The work not only of the production that I actually was able to deliver, but also for the conversation that Dr. Bruning was having as well, which they had never really, when I say the sciences don't really, they don't hold exhibitions, you know, of their work. They go to conferences, they do posters, and this is how they share and they deliver their information. So this was a whole new arena for him and his group, which it was entailed his graduate students. But it was just amazing and it was phenomenal. And we've really gotten some wonderful responses about that, and we were so excited and elated whenever we did end up getting this this grant. So I'm just at the tail end of my aspect of my research, but Dr. Bruning will continue for at least another year, maybe possibly 2 years, to finish this up. And so that was an amazing opportunity for me. This is a catalog of the show, and basically it documents the exhibit. And not only just in the documentation of the visuals themselves, but we also had, I asked for I'm sorry, I'm going to back up. I asked that an art historian to come in and to write about the research from her perspective, because it's always good to have an outside, shall we say, reviewer to come in and to look at the conversations that are going on, visual conversations from my perspective, and then also from Dr. Bruning's perspective. So she interviewed both of us, and then from her eyes and from her, I guess, delivery, she was able to come in and she was able to write about the show and what she thought the exhibit captured, and the conversations that were going on from the science perspective, and then also from the visual arts perspective. So we did have the external reviewer to come in and write about the work. And the opportunity that we've had to not only have the work here at the Texas Tech Museum, but it also, we've traveled it to McAllen, Texas, and we were able to exhibit there at the university, and we are at present in conversations with having the exhibit to travel over to Socorro, Nuevo Mexico, to the University of New Mexico State University in Socorro. And we're hoping to be able to travel it further, because Dr. Bruning is also speaking to other scientists that are expressing an interest for this. So we're hoping that it will continue even to 2020, and we'll see where it goes from there. But we've been able to extend it out, and it's just really, it's also generated an interest, and I guess, what is it, not just the interest, but it's generated ideas, you know, for other people to come in and do some collaboration. This was a collaboration between a scientist and an artist, and so now it's generated some conversations to have, to really to try to push that and get out of our independent silos, shall we say, and be able to go out and have conversations with other people in other arenas that maybe you're not that familiar with. But again, it opens up, as I said earlier, it opens up those communications, so that way it broadens the mind in terms of other possibilities, so that we don't just get, you know, kind of trapped into our independent journey and just stay there over and over and over. It's wonderful to be able to get other thoughts and ideas into the conversations, and what better way than to have collaborations.